Good morning. Welcome to Merchant Taylors School. We wish you were here. It would be so much pleasure to welcome you into the school and talk to you in person and hear your voices, meet your sons, and share our experiences of this wonderful school. But sadly, we are where we are, and I hope that what we managed to achieve this morning will give you a flavour of what life is like here at Merchant Taylors. My name is Simon Everson, I'm the headmaster, and I'm joined by a number of colleagues who are here to help me explain the work that we do. I'm joined by Johnny Taylor, who is my registrar, and he manages the admissions process. I'm joined by Tom Jenkin, who is the head of the lower school and who will be very important to your son when he comes here. And I'm joined by Emma Bindloss, who is a parent of George, who's in year 11 and who would be taking his GCSEs right now if life were slightly different. Yeah. So if I may, just a few words of introduction before we move on to your questions. And we've had a huge number of questions, and thank you for them. And we've collated them into groups. And we're also able to take questions as we go. So if anything occurs or you want to follow up on something, then please send us an email and we might at the end be able to have time to get to it and to answer it. So as introduction, as you already know, Merchant Taylors is a highly successful school. Highly successful in a host of different areas. Yes, we are very academic and we are hugely high achieving in terms of our examination outcomes, but highly successful in a range of other areas as well. In terms of sport, national champions in a number of different sports over the last few years. In terms of music, in terms of design technology, in terms of art, in terms of drama, in terms of a host of different activities. The opportunity for success is pretty much everywhere you go in this school. But we're actually even more than just successful. We draw upon ancient traditions, but we're very much a warm, caring, and engaged community. We want you, I hope you will get a sense of us in this webinar this morning. We want you to understand our personality and our style and the relationships that are in the school. And to get a sense of the breadth, we're much more than a hothouse. There are academic schools, but those schools tend to focus only on the academic. We see the academic as a starting point, and then we ask ourselves, what more can we add to the experience of the pupils? This is a place full of enthusiasm. It's full of curiosity. It's about fostering talent. It's about fostering talent that the young men may not even know they have. And to do that, we need to know the young men in our care very well indeed, so that we can guide and steer them to the next exciting opportunity. Some people say, well, what's a Merchant Taylor's boy? There is no Merchant Taylor's boy. We don't try to create a template. What we instead do is try to understand each young man in the school and then nurture his talents so that he can become most fully himself. So we will be answering your questions, and we will be beginning with the area that most people focused upon, which is the admissions process. Now, this is very complicated, but Johnny, would you like to just give us an oversight of the 11 plus admissions process?
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Simon. And good morning to everyone out there. So for 11 plus, the first key date you need to know is the registration date, which is October 31st. You need to have registered with us by that date. And it's all done online, electronically. So if you go to our website, you can register with us, and the date is October 31st, unless you are applying for a bursary, in which case the deadline is September 30th, and then you will need to request a bursary application form. So those are the key dates. And then we will write to you in November and send you details of our examination which this year in 2021 will be on January the 5th, Tuesday, January the 5th. And your son will be invited in to sit 3 examinations: English, maths, and a general paper. They each last 1 hour. You can find examples of the maths and the English on our website, but we don't release any details of our general paper, which we design ourselves. And the reason for that is that we like to see how the boys cope with something for which they have not been prepared. It's different every year, set by different teachers, but it takes out the impact of things such as tutoring or the particular school that they go to. It helps us to see the boys' raw talent. It's nothing to be concerned or worried about. It is quite good fun, but that's the general paper. So we have 3 exams which are sat in January. On the basis of your son's performance in the examinations, we will shortlist a group of boys for interviews, and they will be brought into Merchant Taylors hopefully between January and February, and they will have a one-to-one interview with a senior member of staff lasting about 25 minutes. In the interview, we will assess their powers of communication, their intellectual curiosity, their reasoning, and we'll also talk to them a little bit about their wider interests, their extracurricular activities, and so on and so forth. And then on the basis of their examination performance and their performance at interview, we will write to you in February with the outcome of the process and make our offers then. I am often asked about numbers. We're looking to recruit about 70 to 75 boys in our year 7 in 4 classes. Every year we have in the region of 400 or just over applications. Out of those we will interview 220 boys, and we will make in the region of about 170 offers, with the hope that about 70 will be accepted. In terms of scholarships, we offer academic and all-rounder scholarships. You do not apply for those. We award those on the basis of performance in the admissions process, and we'll say a little bit more about the scholarships a bit later. We also offer practical scholarships, and those are in subjects such as music, art, drama, PE, and one other I can't remember. But if you are interested in those extracurricular or practical scholarships, you need to apply for those. The forms are online, and the deadline is September the 30th. So that's a quick overview of the process. The details are fully explained on our website, and please don't hesitate to email us if there's something you're not quite sure about in terms of those things.
I'd just add that as a school, we're acutely aware that it can be a terrifying experience, and we are looking to very much draw the best out of the boys. We want them to shine, and we look to give them opportunities to do that. Even on the day itself, the food is nice. We have magicians, and we do everything we can really to dampen down anxieties. We're conscious it's probably the first time your sons will have experienced this sort of thing, and we want to give them a chance to shine.
A lot of questions are obviously relating to the current pandemic and how this will affect the process. And the answer at the moment is that we're simply not sure, because we don't know what we will be allowed to do or not to do by January when the exams are due. So we will obviously listen to what the government asks, and we will review that. People have asked about the nature of the examinations and whether they will be adjusted in light of the disruption that the boys have had. I think we feel that we will not adjust them particularly. For example, the general paper is an equal test for all, regardless of any preparation for it, so it's a good test to have. But what we will look for, I think, is accuracy of application of ideas, not necessarily breadth of ideas. So, for example, in the maths paper, we may not expect you to have covered as much of the syllabus, but we will look for accuracy in the work that your son does. So we hope that we will be able to see the boys do their best, regardless of the difficulties that they may have had in the last couple of terms. In terms of interviewing, we will interview the boys because we see that as really important. We like to get to know the boys as individuals. That's integral to us. We don't do any group interviews. They're all one-to-one, because we like to give boys a chance to speak, regardless of whether they're introvert or not. And we will make that happen within the government regulations. So that's an overview of the process, and that's how we will adjust it in the light of COVID regulations, but we will stick to the core principles of it. We do get asked a lot of questions about, well, what are we looking for in terms of candidates for the school? What kind of boy is a merchant tailor's boy, which always makes me smile. So I think I'll pass over to the headmaster to kick us off on that.
Thank you. Well, you've already heard me say that there is no such thing as a merchant tailor's boy. I suppose the sort of young man that we're looking for, well, I hope he's very similar to the boy that's in your household. I hope that it's your son that will come here and be a merchant tailor's pupil. But what am I looking for when I'm interviewing? I suppose I start with a word that Johnny mentioned earlier, which is curiosity. I want to see young men who are engaged with learning, who are excited by it, who lean into a problem rather than back off and feel nervous about it. I want to work with young men who are intensely interested in the world and intensely aware of the web of relationships and ideas and concepts around them. So curiosity, first of all. This is an academic school. It's a selective, highly achieving school. And so intellect is a key element of what we're looking for. The young men who come here will be stretched and challenged intellectually. They will be given a vast range of opportunities to think and to explore ideas. And that sort of quick, keen intelligence that leaps to an understanding and grapples with an idea is something that we very much want to see. And we want young men who are intellectually ambitious, who push themselves, who ask questions, who continually reach out for further ideas, who don't settle, who aren't satisfied with the first answer, but push beyond and say, well, what are the implications of that? If this, then what happens here? What does it mean for that? To ask and pile up questions to achieve more complex and thoughtful outcomes. We're looking for enthusiasm. We're looking for people who smile as they think and who find pleasure in the play of the mind and the exploration of ideas, but also enthusiasm in terms of getting involved. The boy who puts his hand up when there's a house activity, the boy who hears of a new extracurricular opportunity and thinks, that sounds interesting, I'd really like to find out a bit more about that. I'd like to explore that new opportunity. These are young men who will bring something to the school. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be debating, it could be fencing, it could be cricket. If you're a left-handed leg spinner, then please apply. But bring something to the school, to the party, because that, I think, will make the experience of school for everyone so much better. Johnny's mentioned scholarships. Yes, we have academic scholarships, but he also mentioned all-rounder scholarships, and that says something about what we stand for as a school. We're looking for boys who are rounded, who can excel in a number of different spheres, who are not narrow in their approach. All-rounder speaks very much to the holistic nature of this school and the character of this school. And there are other scholarships as well, talent scholarships in music, in drama, in design technology, in art. All of those are there to recognise exceptional ability in young men in the creative aspects of their life. And that, I think, again, speaks to the nature of the school. And I want to emphasise that these scholarships are not fixed at the point of entry. Boys are given scholarships as they move through the school and as they mature. We're looking to have more scholars rather than fewer scholars. And we want that group of scholars to grow to become a sort of cadre of men who will be prepared for Oxford or Cambridge or other Russell Group or elite universities, and perhaps universities across the Atlantic as well. So what are we looking for? Well, I very much hope we're looking for your son, and I hope that gives some sense of our desire.
I thought it might be useful perhaps to answer questions about how do you help your sons prepare for the interview. Simon's talked about some of the characteristics. We're acutely aware that there's been a kind of arms race to get more and more tutors, and I want to actually counter that. We're looking for potential rather than polish at the stage that your son is at. We don't want robotic, pre-prepared young men. We want boys who can think, who can respond to questions that perhaps they've never considered before. We want them to be perceptive, able to read and engage with the world around them. We want to know what inspires them, what makes them the people they are. How do they think? What makes them stand out? What can they offer? And having conversations around the dinner table, encouraging them to explore grey areas, to develop and perhaps expand on their initial ideas, is going to be a really important aspect of supporting your sons. We would encourage them to read pretty ambitiously as well. It's a characteristic that medics and physicists, as well as your historians and your future journalists, all show here. Avoiding getting rusty as far as possible over the summer and into next term is going to be important as well. There are specimen papers for the exam, but helping your son through conversing and discussing is going to be really important. I wondered what your experience, Emma, was as a parent going through this. What was your take on it?
I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that when we came for our interview, we were not unlike you, going through quite an exciting time in our lives. It wasn't a pandemic, but we thought that we were going to be proceeding through the prep school that my son was at in the normal way, and it turned out that life had a different plan for us and we were sent overseas. So we came for an interview with Johnny, and I didn't actually have an awful lot of time to prepare George for it. And in actual fact, I think that turned out to be a really good thing, because I think George just came in here as any other child would, curious, and he was quite relaxed about it. So I think my advice would be relaxed and make sure your children are rested, and because I think that that's how they will perform at their best. And George also has a benefit of a music scholarship here, and I think that's really worth noting, because George is not necessarily, I might be doing him down, but I'm not expecting him to be a professional musician. But what the music scholarship has done for him is open doors for him to experience things that I would never have dreamt of. You know, going to perform at Merchant Taylors' Hall, having the confidence to stand up and play a solo in front of many people. Those are things that you can't really put too high a prize on, because that is giving him confidence. So I would say that I wouldn't say put your children in front of that situation right now, but just allow them to experience things that they're particularly keen on, their hobbies.
Emma, did he feel he was being grilled when he came for interview, or what was he like in the immediate?
Exactly. I would say not at all. I mean, he, as I say, I didn't have time we had no tutor, we had very little time to just sort of, in fact, it was as much as I could get in here. And George, I just remember him coming out saying that he talked about a picture with Johnny, and he described that picture. And yeah, he was perfectly happy and relaxed, and I was happy as a result.
I think it's an important point to make that we don't expect the boys in January of year 6 to be the finished article. Tom made a point about potential, and I think that's a really, really key point. When it comes to shortlisting boys for interview, we take the top 150 boys in terms of their overall exam results, but then we look at each individual exam, and any boy who's aced one of the exams, regardless of how he's done in the other two, will also get an interview. So, for example, the general paper, which you can't prepare for, gives a great opportunity for boys to show their broader talents, their ability to think through something that they've not seen before, to work something out, or to think reflectively. So, if they've got the potential, we will discover it, and it's the same in the interview, because we do one-to-one interviews. To enable us to discover the potential, it's very important that they don't come in with pre-rehearsed answers to questions that you think we might ask, because we don't. We all do it in our own way, and we all ask slightly different things, but assessing their ability to talk, their ability to think, their ability to problem solve, and their ability to contribute to the school. So just let them be themselves. But I think that in terms of preparing them, talking to your sons regularly about interesting things and making them think about their answers and develop their answers is quite a good way of preparing them for an interview. So I quite like using cartoons from the newspapers in my interview and asking the boy why they think it's funny. Which is quite an open-ended question. It gets them to think about what lies behind the humour, not necessarily what the cartoon's about, but why it's funny. So things like that, where you talk and explore ideas with your son and just probe those ideas, are great preparation for interviews. They don't need to cram in a massive amount of knowledge about a particular subject or the news. We'll talk to them about their interests, their hobbies, dare I say it, life at home as well, and get them to relax, and then we will draw them out and get them thinking in a way. So don't worry about over rehearsing your sons for the interview, because in some ways that may actually create difficulties with them when we ask them something a little bit more unexpected.
Great, thank you very much. One of the questions that cropped up a number of times in the messages that you sent us was an interest in how the school has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm really pleased to say that we've been able to respond really quite nimbly, and we've been very pleased with the support that we've received from the pupils and the parents. Both have said that they have really appreciated the efforts that the school has made on their behalf, and that the provision has been exceptional. We moved almost overnight from being a vibrant school full of children to being an online virtual school. And teachers found themselves streaming their lessons live, very much in the way that we're streaming this now. They were making podcasts. They're using software to set work and to receive work and to mark it. Teleconferences came into being. And we found ourselves being able to offer the same curriculum at the same time. So if it's 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and if it was French, it's still French, and the boys see their French teacher on the screen, are able to interact with the teacher, with each other, and the lesson goes ahead just as it might. That's worked incredibly well. We've found the great success, and we've hardly broke stride academically in terms of how we've gone about our business. And even in the areas that you might think that online virtual experience would impact negatively, we found ways around it. So with sport, obviously we haven't been able to gather to play team sports, but we've been able to work on skills, and we've been able to work on fitness, and we've been able to contact boys and to ensure that through software that they can actually get a bit of competitive spirit going, where you can time the length of time it takes you to run or cycle a certain distance, and then post that time against others, and really just enjoy being active, even in a time of lockdown.
Simon, I'd just pick up on that. And I think in addition to the sympathetic and engaged curriculum subjects and the extracurricular ones, something I think we've really focused on as a school is the pastoral care and the contact at an individual level. And it's something perhaps I'm proudest about out of our provision overall. Boys have a tutor, and we'll expand on that a little bit in a minute. But that individual contact has continued. Arguably, it's even grown in importance over the last few months. And I think your son's individual needs are things that are absolutely central to what we believe in here. What's been your experience as a parent of a boy with a tutor?
Yeah, I mean, two things. I think, first of all, just to address the tutor system, that George's tutor has been so important to George, first fitting into the school. The great thing about the tutor group is it's a vertical system, so that George is mixing with boys from the upper six down to year 7. And that's great because he has the opportunity to mentor and be mentored. And Mr. Pacey, Malcolm, has been just so helpful during this particular period of disruption, where George was, he was working full tilt towards his GCSEs, and then overnight it stopped. On the Monday morning, I had a phone call from Malcolm, and he was engaging with George. That's continued, particularly now that they're working on an actual timetable. So 2 or 3 times a week, he's meeting with his tutor group. Malcolm can get him to do things that I can't. So I suggested that maybe the children might like to recreate some of these pictures from the National Gallery at home. And they wouldn't countenance that, but he managed to get George to pretend to be a horse and be Whistlejacket from the National Gallery. So that's been a great thing. It's been really helpful to have that contact, and it just shows what can carry on offline as it does in school.
I think it's been a real opportunity for teachers just to reflect on their teaching practice and to reevaluate everything they do. It's like starting again, and that's actually been very refreshing. The nature of your lessons and how you think about how do I communicate this online has been very invigorating for all of us, I think, and the sharing of ideas. And I have to say, as a cricket coach, it's been brilliant for one-to-one coaching, because boys have been videoing themselves playing pull shots or keeping wicket. You can actually give that advice by looking at that film again and delivering that back to them so they can improve. So I think it's seen the best of us as a community, because we pulled together as a community and really made it work. And though we missed the boys incredibly, and we missed that sort of the chance to sit down at lunch and just chat with them, I feel that as a school we've responded in a way that it doesn't surprise me, frankly, because we're a strong community who respond to these kind of challenges and make the best of them.
The younger boys have enjoyed clubs continuing, everything from Latin to Lego, and it's something that occupies boys where they're able to, of course, but it's something that we've been really proud of as well. It's giving opportunities for boys to find little niches, to explore ideas creatively and imaginatively, and to communicate and develop ideas beyond the curriculum subjects. Has George done anything in terms of clubs?
He's done a lot, and you mentioned Lego because that's one of his passions. So he's been doing Lego. There's an Airfix club. One thing that I found particularly useful for George, because he's the kind of child who quite likes his own company, and his friends are very similar. So when they get together at school, they're all very close, but they found communicating in lockdown quite difficult. and one of the teachers has set up a diplomacy club. So our evening meals are filled with strategies about how Turkey is doing the dirty to Russia and Austria and all the rest of it. But that has been brilliant, really helpful.
I think what comes through this are two really key things about the school. The first is that word community, that real sense of belonging and a partnership. And that's a partnership which extends to the parents as well, because we need to work with you to support your son. But the other element is the way that we place the boy at the centre of everything we do. He very much is important to us, and understanding him and his needs and meeting them are absolutely the core of what the school is trying to achieve. And then that shows itself in 1,000 different ways. We've perhaps shown a few of them. But also, let's go back to those numbers that Johnny mentioned right at the start. With 4 classes, and we're looking for 70 to 75 boys. I'm going to let you do the maths, but those are small classes. And if you compare that with our competitors and other schools, where you'll find the boys are being taught in classes of more than 30 as they arrive in the school, it gives you a very clear sense of where the emphasis is. We deliberately operate the smaller classes because we care about the individual, and it means we can get to know each boy, and the teachers can lavish time in the lesson that wouldn't be otherwise available.
I think that's a good point, actually, because that raises the whole nature of transition, because it's quite a challenging age, isn't it, to transfer from quite often a smaller primary school into a big secondary school. Distance of travel will be further, friends will be further apart. So those small class sizes, certainly under 20, enables the boys to integrate to school, I think, very easily, and to forge new friendships amongst their circles. And as Emma says, because they're in vertical tutor groups, they're not just mixing with their own age group, but they're also mixing with older boys who remember what it was like to be an 11-year-old at senior school and will watch out for them. So they have those friendships are forged very quickly, and transition, I think, is one of our real strong points because of the smaller year group compared to other schools perhaps in the area.
John, do you want to say something about how we support that?
Yes, I think interesting to note that our current year 7s, mindful of the situation that we're in, asked if they could put together a video for boys joining us in September, and they recognise more than arguably we do the challenges of going from a smaller school to a bigger one. But I thought it spoke to their character and their sense of community that they wanted to do this video Q&A. And we're acutely aware that all boys are going to be coming from a completely different situation before they arrive at Merchant Taylors. The youngest years here, particularly years 7 and 8, are about stabilising and making sure everybody reaches the same level, but also, and arguably mainly, about developing just a love of learning. Boys almost universally, we've pretty much got 100% boys who say that they just love coming to school, and it's something that I'm super proud about.
I think it's your work is very important to that. I mean, we started by asking what's been the impact of COVID, and I think the answer is we've changed what we do, but we haven't changed how we do it and the goal that we're working towards. We have 5 words that we've been thinking when we were trying to define the school and our practice. We ended up with 5 words, and those 5 words are as important now as they were before the lockdown. And we've always spoken about innovation. Well, we've certainly been innovative in this new world that we're living in. We've spoken about inspiration, and I'm delighted that we're continuing to inspire the boys and to find ways to engage with them. We've spoken about bravery. That's physical bravery in terms of sport, but also moral bravery and intellectual bravery. And I think this is a time when we've all had to be brave, and the pastoral care that we offer has helped the boys in that. We've spoken about in this school about confidence. That's our 4th word. And that confidence is shining through in the way in which, well, the year 7s want to reach out to the new boys and the diplomacy club is fiercely debating the politics of Europe. That's unchanged. And our final word, which emerges from all of the other 4 words, our final word is joy. And joy remains at the heart of the merchant tailor's experience. The boys learn joyfully, they greet each other joyfully, and they care for each other joyfully. So have we changed? Not really. We're still the same. And I meet the boys, my academic scholars group, on a regular basis online. So I get a chance to talk to them directly and hear what their experience is. And they're finding it positive. We're finding a way through. We can't wait to get back. We can't wait to get everyone back in school. But it hasn't been too much of a roadblock to go online.
So I'm sorry, I thought just developing that, we had a very interesting question from a parent asking, how do we prepare students for the world that's changing, that's evolving? And I thought I might pick that up with the help of colleagues in a minute. The first thing I wanted to say as the head of their school is that the culture that we encourage is not one that is characterised by sharp-tongued or aggressive or individualistic. There is a kindness and a gentleness and a supportiveness that characterises the boys. And I think that is a really important part of the school. A few years ago, we developed a wellbeing programme that's really central to helping boys become young men and eventually leaders in our communities. We focus on nutrition, sleep, stress, and other things. We focus on mental health and on recognising, supporting, and removing any stigmas associated with it. And I'm really proud of these character-based areas that will help boys become adaptable and self-reliant and flexible. We've got an assembly programme that thinks about cultural questions, spiritual and moral questions. Quite quickly, boys end up taking these assemblies themselves. They're given an opportunity to be leaders, to develop presentation techniques, and to enjoy the experience of standing in front of a group. We also have a huge range of opportunities outside of the classroom. So boys, for example, are involved in robotics, in programming, in journalism, in visiting speaker programs. And it's something that is incredibly exciting for the boys here as they develop these skills that are going to allow them to adapt to the world around them. I wondered if I perhaps could open it up to others here. In terms of preparing for the world around us, have you experienced any of these things as a parent?
I certainly think, to your point about kindness, I was just reflecting on the difference when you go from primary school to secondary school. Obviously, you're starting that process of letting your son go, and you don't see your son and his friends in the same way as you do at primary school. But I have to say that every time George brings home his friends, I'm just really struck by how supportive they are and how well behaved and how polite they are. And I think that's got a lot to do with the atmosphere at school, that they flourish here.
I think you need to model the behaviour you want to see. And yes, we want the boys to be kind and we want the boys to be engaged, and that means the teachers have to be kind and engaged. And an enormously important part of my role is the recruitment of staff and the retention of good staff. And I can honestly say, I think we're working with the best common room that I've ever worked with. They're dynamic, they're young. I mean, the way they've responded to the pandemic has been inspirational. And they're deeply involved in the process of teaching and learning. They're always asking questions about how they can improve their practice and meet the needs of the boys in an even more effective way. So I think the atmosphere is very much one of collaboration within the school, with staff and pupils working together and forming really strong relationships. And I think that's the strength of the school.
So I think that comes out through the way we've looked at our curriculum as well over many years. We've always sought, I think, to develop those areas of curriculum that anticipate the needs of the 21st century, and no visitor of the school can be but overawed by the sight of our design technology department at the end of the drive, which we decided was a key development for us as a school. We felt the country needed engineers and designers, and we invested heavily in that, and that has certainly inspired the boys, but also in the recent crisis, our design technology department and the boys have led the way in producing PPE for the community around us, and it sums up a lot of what we are about as a school, that we're very firmly grounded and in our community and have an awareness of our community, and our curriculum supports the boys' ability to take their place in the world around them and develop a sense of empathy around it. So over many years, our curriculum, I've always felt, anticipates the needs of the boys in their future.
Innovators, entrepreneurs, people who will be conversant with the technologies of the future. There's a sweet spot where technological savvy meets creativity. If you can code and you can do the crunchy maths, that's great. You will be successful. If you are creative and you can present and lead a team and be dynamic, that's great. But if you can do both, if you're existing at that spot on the graph, then the future is yours. And that's the area we're looking to develop. And a great example is a new development this year, Vex Robotics, where our inspirational head of DT, Mr. Duffy, who was behind the PPE, has trained up teams of boys to take part in a robotics competition where you competitively design and build and then race and compete with those robots against other schools. We had 6 teams this year from a standing start. 5 of them won the nationals and were all of them heading off to Kentucky in America to take part in the world finals with the very best global teams when unfortunately the pandemic struck. But it's a perfect example of that kind of innovation and development that really does inspire the pupils and prepare them for the future. So I hope that goes some way towards us answering the question, how do we help the boys to be at the forefront of this? But Tom, we've talked about stretching, but let's look at the most able, but also not everyone can be at the very peak in every subject. How do we help those that might need a bit more help?
Very good question. Well, we've got a dedicated learning support team, and they work with staff. There's a lot of training that goes on so that staff are well equipped to cater for boys' individual needs. And we do quite a lot of data and work behind the scenes. And one of the things we're proudest about as a school is that boys with individual needs, individual learning support needs, achieve just as highly as those who don't. And that's partly because of the work of the Learning Support Department, the tolerance of staff, the differentiation that happens in lessons, so that there are resources that stretch and encourage everyone, from the most able, who's had a very smooth time over the COVID experience, to a boy who's perhaps low on confidence, who has had a more challenging time, who is perhaps slower to develop. We're acutely aware that boys are not the finished article for years. They evolve, they change. So in addition, at the top end, to the scholarship programs and to the essay competitions and the opportunity to lead and initiate, we have a thinking skills taught course that all boys participate in. We have the expectation that all are involved in clubs and societies, and boys find niches where they can thrive, areas where they're king and they can be authoritative and in control, even if they're finding maths and English tough. And they all get there in the end. Some just take a little bit longer than others. So I hope that's some comfort, I suppose, to those of you wondering, is my son going to be good enough? Is he going to cope? Probably. And I'd apply, and I'd be very, very optimistic that your son will absolutely thrive and find their feet swiftly here.
I mean, if I could also, yes, add from an admissions point of view, we do have a learning support advisor as part of the admissions team, And we do ask that when you register, if your son has a learning support issue, that you alert us to it, and she will phone you up and discuss that with you so that we can best support your son through the admissions process to ensure that it's fair for him. And she will conduct those discussions with you, and also if your son gains a place at the school, we then will make sure that his transition to Merchant Taylors is carefully organised to take into account any learning support needs. So we will support your son if he has a learning support issue throughout the admissions process, and then that carries on into the school.
Wonderful. Tom, you're leader of pastoral care in the lower school, and I think we have already touched on a number of aspects of it. There are obviously tutors within the school who look after a small number of boys, 12 perhaps, maybe one or two more, and know them intimately and know their parents, and over the years develop very strong relationships. It is, I think, a distinctive thing about the school that it is able to offer pastoral care of the quality that we can. Is there anything else you'd want to say?
Well, I think for some, there is the need for extra support. We have dedicated counsellors in the school, and some boys drop in because they're finding it tough at home and they just have one session. Others have a longer experience. But on a more regular day-to-day basis, the school is structured so that you will join a tutor group with an individual, and you stay with this individual, this teacher who registers you for multiple days of the week, who oversees you not just in year 7, but in year 8, 9, 10, and so on. And these groups tend to be quite small and intimate, often or usually 10 to 14 in size. And I thought, Emma, you made a really interesting point that there's a sort of mentoring that's built into that.
Yeah.
How's George's experience been in the tutor system? What's he found himself doing recently?
I mean, as I say, he has had very regular contact with his tutor, and it's just, you know, it's a nice sort of check-in, and sometimes it's talking, you know, to Mr. Pacey about how his grades are going, and Malcolm is very good at keeping in touch with George about that. If there's an area of concern, he'll work with him about it. But sometimes it's just about how his day is going, which is great.
An interesting question that came in associated with pastoral care and boys' wellbeing was actually one to do with food and meals, and it's often one of the most important things for our 11 and 12-year-olds and some 42-year-olds. But anyway, the food here is excellent. Boys have a wide choice of meals. There's really good vegetarian provision, and boys in the younger years get preferential treatment. They go in early, and they sit with each other, they sit and converse, staff eat in the same room, and it's part of the sort of civilised experience of being at Merchant Taylors. It's a school characterised by conversation and by the ability for all to interact. There aren't sort of hierarchies or years that are aggressive towards each other. It is a sort of smooth and comfortable experience when they interact with each other around the school. But I think the meals are pretty important, especially if you're 10 years old and looming lunchtimes arriving. We hope they have a good experience of this when they come for their exams here.
I mean, I would have to say I've been at the school for a very long time, over 30 years, and over 25 of those I spent as a tutor of boys, and in that time I've got to know families and boys and formed some lifelong friendships. And I think it's the thing possibly I'm most proud of about this school is the idea that there is somebody in this school that you can speak to when your son comes home and he's lost his rugby boots, or he can't do his maths prep and he bursts into tears. There is a name and a face that you can turn to, and who will, we hope, stay with your son for the duration of his career. As a parent myself of children in secondary education, I think that idea is very reassuring, that there is a contact that you can turn to, and I think it's something that puts Taylors out there in terms of the care it shows for your son and the communication between home and school.
Very good. Let's move on to another question that a number of parents have asked, which is about careers and university destinations. And I think that's an important area. We've been speaking about life in the school and the experience of boys at the school, and that's right. That's our key focus. But it's also really important that we ensure that they progress to the next stages successfully and that they thrive. And so it was probably one of the first things I did when I arrived here 7 years ago, was to really focus on careers advice and careers guidance, and to ensure that the boys experienced absolute Rolls-Royce provision. It's about developing skills, it's about providing experience, it's about offering opportunity, and it's about building up a bank of understanding about the world of work. And that's crucially important. I mean, a number of our boys are, when they're thinking about going to university, thinking about vocational degrees, by which I mean a degree that equips you for a particular profession. So if you're going into medicine, or if you're going to veterinary school, or if you're looking to be an architect, or if you're thinking about dentistry, then you really do need to know a great deal before you commit to that course. And it's really important that the school provides that information.
In the lower school in particular, in year 7 and 8, there are days off timetable. We try to be as broad and open as we can. There are problem-solving challenges, team-building challenges. There are visiting speakers. And I know a year or so ago, George and his team did really well in one of these careers-based things. So what was that?
So
he won something.
Yeah, he did. He and his group. George is very passionate about DT, and he and his group, they were doing a challenge where they had to build a bridge made out of paper and string, or paper. I can't quite remember. But anyway, he very proudly was in the winning group, and they then went to Alfred McAlpine to spend a day to have a look around their offices. So this was in fourths, which is year 9, which is a great opportunity. And I also want to say how useful the careers service is, really, particularly starting from year 9. Because they start to talk to the boys about Moresby testing, which, if you're not aware of, it's a great way of forming a good picture of that child and where their potential lies, which then in turn helps them to choose their GCSE subjects and A-levels. And it's all part of that information. And I feel very strongly now for my son, having missed out on the opportunity of actually taking his GCSEs, that the careers service is there to help guide him, because we've had this sort of full stop without that experience of taking the exams. And so I'm very grateful that we have their support.
We talk quite a bit as a 4 here about the opportunities and the extracurricular opportunities. I wonder very briefly, what sorts of things has George enjoyed? If you could just cover a couple of the things he's enjoyed.
Absolutely. I mean, the things that George has enjoyed, particularly, he's very involved in music. He is in numerous ensembles. He's also done things like board games clubs. He's been involved in some coding. As a sport, George has now chosen to do mountain biking. He sort of tried his hand at rugby and cricket, but it wasn't really his thing. But again, that's a great thing for George. He's not shoehorned into doing a sport that he doesn't enjoy. He's found something that he really does enjoy and look forward to, which is great, because that's very far away from my own schooling experience. So I'm pleased for that. I think another thing that, as a parent, I hope that, the other things he's done is CCF. He's really passionate about that, and he's done Duke of Edinburgh. But another thing that I think is really impressive about the school is the involvement in FAB, which I had no idea what FAB was all about.
Yes, it's something that, how many years have we supported the FAB charity, Johnny? 40, actually. 40, over 40. Yeah. And it's a hugely important point, a partnership that we have. It's a residential week that we fundraise for, and then the boys run that supports young people with quite acute physical or mental disabilities. And it's something that is an important part of our school culture.
Of course, it's also an example of something that we cooperate with St Helens with. We could quite often get asked about whether we work with other girls' school, and our sister school is St Helens, which is just down the road in Northwood, and we do plays and music and CCF and careers, and obviously the Fab holiday and the fundraising is a joint effort. So we feel that we've got the best of both worlds in working very closely with our sister school down in Northwood and doing loads of activities together, whilst also pursuing our own curriculum.
And there will be something for everyone. If they're keen on judo, then they can do that. There's all manner of outward bounds opportunities that all boys have access to with our lovely facilities, including a chance to camp out or to learn kayaking or stand-up paddleboarding, and really to develop our passion for something. And there are too few hours in the day, but I would really direct you towards our website, where we've got a huge and lovely booklet that details the huge range of things that the school offer. I wish I was 11 years old and back here myself.
When the boys come into the school after about 3 or 4 weeks, there's a big fair we hold where all the clubs and societies advertise what they do, and the new boys can come along and see what excites them and then sign up for them. I noticed we're getting quite close to 12 o'clock, which is our scheduled finish. So perhaps I can move it on to some of the really interesting and challenging questions that were sent to us. And I'm going to bracket to them. Diran, who's age 10, has actually sent us loads of brilliant questions, and I'm going to direct this one to the head because I think this will really catch him out. Diran wants to know how many teachers and classrooms we have, Headmaster, and whilst I'll give you some thinking time on that, because a lot of parents also wanted to know and would welcome your views about what makes Merchant Taylors different to other schools, and what is it that makes you most proud about Merchant Taylors boys?
Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Darren. That's you put me on the spot, but I think meet your exacting standards. We have 110 teachers and we have 100 classrooms, which means most of the teachers are in their own classroom and have a space that they've made their own. And I hope you get to visit every single classroom and are taught by every single teacher. The question then, lovely question, what are we most proud of people saying about our boys? Well, they are our best ambassadors. I'm absolutely bowled over by the quality of the young men that come to this school. They are the thing I'm most proud of. I think they represent us superbly. They're very intelligent, they're hugely successful in what they do, but they're also caring and supportive of each other. Boys come here and are happy, and they know that they're looked after by their friends, and they've got a wide circle of supportive friends. They're confident, they're comfortable in their own skin. They're leaders, and they learn to be leaders because of the opportunities they get through the extracurricular provision that we have and through the sport. But although they're confident, although they're leaders, although they're successful, they're not arrogant. There's no chippiness, there's no sense of entitlement here. The boys are a pleasure to be with. And perhaps the best way to describe the kind of young man that we want to leave this school is we want these to be when they're 40, we want them to be the sort of person that you're really glad to discover is sitting next to you in a dinner party. And because they're successful, because they are interesting, because they're interested in you and they ask questions, and because they have a quirky and insightful view of the world. Those are the people that we want to produce from here, that I'm most proud of. And at the end of the day, although we learn things, we come to school to learn how to do things. Ultimately, we leave school knowing how to be someone. And it seems to me that when they've forgotten everything they knew about Wordsworth, and when the intricacies of the 30 Years' War have fled from their minds, there are certain intangibles that remain that are crucially important. Have the boys that leave us learned how to lead? Have the boys that leave us learned how to serve? Have they learned how to foster friendship? Have they learned to trust others? Have they learned to trust themselves? Have they learned how to learn? And perhaps the most important question of all, have they learned how to be happy? And that is something I think we do teach here. I think we teach how to be a thriving, successful human being as a person as well as in terms of achievement. So thank you for your interest. I really appreciate you tuning in. Congratulations if you've lasted the full hour. You have stamina. I'm very impressed. And I hope you've learned something about us and about the way in which we go about our business. So I'm going to say goodbye, and we hope to see your son here at Merchant Taylors. Bye-bye.